Well, here we are, 8.5 days later, and guess what is done? You guessed it. The RAID is done initializing. I powered it down to get a few minutes of silence, because listening to this fan for 8.5 days, it starts to drive you a little insane after a while. But I didn't want to wait. I'm also testing a new microphone, see how that goes. But I wanted to plug this in and speed test it, because I couldn't help myself. I did a speed test before it was done initializing, and the results were disappointing. And I figured, you know, it's initializing, it's warning that it's going to be slow. So I want to see how it performs now that it's done. And of course I wanted you to see as well. So we're going to turn our camera that way. Fire up RAID admin. Actually, let's turn the camera back, because you know, it looks pretty when it's starting up. Power on. Now you are going to see some warnings pop up. Here's the first one, because I disconnected one of the power supplies and one of the fans to minimize the noise a little. The single fan actually pulls in so much air that the front of the RAID is very, very cold to the touch. So I know it gets the job done. Alright. Drives are coming online. It should be green everywhere. Green on the 7 terabyte. Green on whatever I turned that into. So that's a good sign. Give this a little nudge to update faster. And we're online. Like I said, you're gonna see some warnings, because one of the fans is offline, one of the power supplies is offline, and thus one of the RAID batteries is offline. But we're gonna ignore that for now, and we're going to check out our brand new 6.37 terabyte RAID. I already mounted this on the desktop, and according to the Finder, it is 7 terabytes, not 6.30 something like it said. So what we're gonna do, just like before with disk utility, we are going to create a new disk image, call it something random. Let's make it 4.5 gigabytes so we can get an idea of the throughput. Fire up the activity monitor and hit create. And we're getting about 85 megabytes per second. Which is not great, to be honest. I have to go back and look at the previous video to see what kind of speeds we were getting when I was using a software RAID. I was hoping for 100, but I guess 84, 85 will have to do. And it's done. Now, I was hoping for a higher speed, but that said, I don't care too much about the write speed because this will be used for long-term storage. I am more curious about the read speeds, and I do definitely want those to be more than 100 megabytes per second. So here we go. Put the image back on the desktop and see what we're getting. It's kind of all over the place, but it does seem to be consistently over 100 megabytes per second, which I am happy with. And we're done. Now, of course, eventually the goal is to have that side full of 1 terabyte drives as well in a RAID 0, and then build a 14 terabyte RAID with disk utility out of both of them. I don't know how much more speed that's going to give me. I don't think it'll give me much more, so it might not even be worth the 8.5 day wait to initialize such a thing. But just wanted to give you this quick update. I also have a 1.5 terabyte hard drive just to see if it'll work or not. A lot of the material online says absolutely not. Nothing over a terabyte will work in this thing. But you know, if you really want the answer, you just gotta try it for yourself. So I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna need one of the adapters in here to test it with though, because I don't think this old clunky adapter is gonna get the job done. But I'm gonna enjoy a few days of peace and quiet first, and probably next weekend I'll have this in a rack. I'll fire it up, and we're gonna try to fit a 1.5 terabyte drive in here. If that fails, then don't worry, there's plenty left to talk about. I'm probably gonna go over all the things that I tried to find, all the information I tried to find online before starting this myself that I could not find. That's the content I want to put out there. It's going to be boring for most people, but if anyone is going to be searching for information on this topic in the future, hopefully they will find exactly the content they want on my channel. So that's what I'll be focusing on first after I try to put this 1.5 terabyte drive in. And after that, we still have the the Xserve G4 to talk about, and plenty of other stuff. So stay tuned, and I will see you soon. Actually, before we go, I got the question quite a few times, what would have happened if the power went out while this was initializing? I of course didn't hook this up to a battery backup or anything while I was doing this, but let's find out right now. We're going to use the right side of the RAID. Create a new RAID 0, all 250 gig hard drive, so the result will be about 1.5 terabytes. And we're going to create it. I'm going to let this run to about 1% initializing, and then I'm going to yank the power plug out, and we're going to see what happens. It's done already? The rate controller is still restarting. Actually, I'm going to try to shut it down, not yank the plug out. Because I do not want to compromise my 7 terabyte that I just spent 8.5 days waiting on. This should be updating in a second. There we go. The second RAID just popped up and is now initializing. I don't know how long it's gonna take to get to 1%. I might speed up the video until we get there, or I might just stop recording and continue after it gets there. But yeah. Okay, it took a minute, but we are now initialized at 1%. What I'm gonna do is power it down through the RAID admin. Now keep in mind, it only has one power supply, and the second RAID battery is not fully charged at the moment. So we'll see what happens. Will it even let me shut it down? Yep, there it goes. And it's off. Still connected to the power though, but it is shut down. Or as RAID admin calls it, in standby mode. Now what we're going to do is power it back on. There. Standby power mode. I'm going to power it on. Drives are spinning up, controllers are starting. Okay, the 7 terabyte mounts on my desktop as expected. And the 1.5 terabyte, because it's doing a background initialization, it is showing up on the system as available to format. It's not showing up in disk utility yet. Oh yes, it is. I'm going to erase it as 1.6 terabytes. Okay, so that's now formatted, and it remembered where it was in the initialization process. Right there. So that's good. That is good. Now, I'm going to do it anyway. Quit RAID admin, unmount the drive, and now I'm going to hard cut the power, which is a really dumb idea. But you know what? I want to see what happens. So I'm cutting the power now. And as I'm starting to sweat profusely, I'm going to plug this back in and wait for it to power back on. Now, in real life, this should never happen, because nobody is stupid enough to use this without a battery backup of some kind. So, just wanted to put that out there. If what just happened here happens to you, unplanned and unscheduled, your setup is not okay. Because a power outage will happen when the RAIDs are mounted to the host system it's connected to, which can cause a lot more problems. But in this case, I wanted to see what happens with the initialization. Okay, it came back online. Both sides are mounting on my desktop, and this one is active. So I think, well, it is initializing, but did it remember it was at 1%? Let's find out. It did. It is now at 2%. So worst case scenario, well, almost the worst case scenario, because if this happens when your drives are mounted, you're probably in a world of hurt. So at least I unmounted them first, but this is as far as I'm willing to take it. I'm not gonna yank the power with the discs mounted, because yeah, just not gonna do that. But if you use this with a battery backup, you should be alright in case of some power outage. If you do not have a battery backup, let's say this thing is hosting information that's not super important, you don't mind waiting a week for this thing to initialize, sudden power outage, no battery backup, it appears you might be okay. Although I highly recommend using this with a battery backup. Speaking of power, I hooked up a kilowatt to see how much this thing uses. Okay, let's try this again. I have now hooked everything up to one extension cord, goes to the kilowatt. Looks terrible, but doesn't matter for now. And we have numbers that make more sense. What a shocker. It's now running both power supplies, both fans, and in a moment all 7 hard drives, and the power consumption goes up to 230-ish watts. And this is just the Xserve RAID. We're not including the host system, which you need to run as well to have access to this thing. But as we found, or as I have found, this thing runs just fine on a single fan and a single power supply, which is probably how I'm going to run this thing, because it'll be connected to a battery backup anyway. So let's disconnect a fan. Alright, one fan disconnected, saves us about 10 watts. And now we are disconnecting a power supply. We're down to 190 watts with all drives active. Saves about 3 watts. So the power draw of 7 2.5-inch hard drives being written to at the same time costs us about 3 watts of power. That's not a lot. Now, of course, the 3.5-inch drives are going to take a lot more juice than the 2.5-inch drives. So if you have this thing fully loaded, 14 2.5-inch hard drives, you should use even less than this. Alright, it's done writing. I'm going to delete the new RAID array because I don't need it. I was just testing. And there we are. With all hard drives idle, one power supply, one fan, we are looking at about 169 watts. Now, update this real quick. This information is not accurate because this power supply is actually disconnected. This fan is disconnected, that is accurate. So in an idle state, one fan, one power supply, you're looking at about 165, 67 watts. So yeah, these are the numbers for what they're worth. Like I said, you have to add your host system to this, which unfortunately cannot be a Mac Mini. It has to be an Xserve, a G5, or a Mac Pro that can handle a PCI Express fiber card. So you can go to my Xserve video, which if I can figure it out, will link somewhere here, there, or there, I don't know, where I covered the power draw of the Xserve before and after the board upgrade, sorry. And you can add those numbers together to see what kind of power draw you're looking at in total. Now, a Mac Pro will require less power than an Xserve. A G5 might require a little bit more power than a Mac Pro, but should still be less than an Xserve. So, if you take the Xserve numbers, you'll probably get a good idea of what your power draw will be in total. Actually, if I'm not too lazy, I might do a little overlay on this video and do the math for you. But yeah, there it is. The speed is not that impressive. Shut this down. The speed is not that impressive, but it's enough for my needs. I will have to set this all up once everything is done, set it up, put some media on here, try to stream it to my Apple TV and see if 100 megabytes per second is fast enough. It should be, but I prefer to test it and get actual results than to just guess my way through this stuff. So stay tuned. It might be a week or so before I get back to you with this, but I will be back. Thanks for watching. Also check out the links below in the description. It has my Patreon, amongst other things, which you should definitely check out. It has links to all my other works, my blog, other work that I've done, and I would appreciate your contribution. Thank you.